So I wanted to do some stuff on Max for Live, but rather than build things and explain what I'm doing, I wanted to highlight some useful ways in. So tutorials, help files, examples, other resources to maybe help you broaden out if you're struggling to get involved, or there's things that you understand but things you don't understand, or just generally you want to kind of improve your Mac skills. I wanted to just sort of highlight this stuff. The first thing to say is that I wanted to highlight some of the key differences between Max for Live, which is Max inside Ableton, and the Max standalone. So this is Max running on its own. There it is, without Ableton running in the background. What happens here is that because Ableton Live is the license for the Max editor inside Max for Live, you don't have to own a Max license to work Max for Live. If you want to use Max standalone, you have to buy a full license for Max, which is not really worth doing if you're only doing Max for Live stuff. But the thing is that some of the help files and tutorials are geared up for the full Max license, not Max for Live. The main difference is in Max for Live, obviously, if you're making some sort of audio thing, your audio will end up going out to plug out. We've seen plug out that goes off to Ableton. If you're not working in Max for Live, if you're working in normal Max, you tend to see this thing. It's called Easy DAC or Easy DAC, and it comes up as a little speaker, and that's the connection from Max to your sound card, which in this instance should be built in Black Hole Mix. Who knows whether that's going to work or not. And then what you do to interact with it is you turn it on, and then it will make noises. And the reason I'm explaining this is because when you look at help files and examples that have that icon in them, they won't play any sound if you're looking at the help files inside Max for Live, because Max for Live doesn't know what to do with that Easy DAC object. In fact, what you might get is some unreliable behavior if you try and turn on those examples. So I'm going to go through this first bit in the full versions of Max, but you can see that I've not started my trial, so I can't save anything, but it doesn't matter because I'm just looking at some tutorials. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got. So a good place to start is the help menu and the reference tool, which comes up as a kind of separate browser document. And this is the user manual for Max. Basically, it's enormous, and there's lots and lots of stuff in here. And the way it's organized is that we have tutorials, tips, messages, and so forth. It's kind of bits and bobs geared towards Max, and then other ones geared towards MSP, and other ones geared towards Jitter. For all intents and purposes, Max and MSP are the same thing. When you see Max explained as Max 8 or Max for Live or whatever, it's Max and an MSP in the same box, if you like. The distinction is that Max is the sequencing part, the messaging part, and MSP is the audio processing part. So the tutorials are split up. But Jitter, if you're interested in doing video stuff, Jitter is a full kind of video patching system inside Max, and Jitter does work in Max for Live as well. So you can make sort of graphical objects that work in your Max for Live patches. So let's see what we've got going on here. So let's have a look at the Max tutorials. There's lots and lots and lots of them. It might be that you find that you want to do a certain thing, like maybe you want to do some maths, and you're not quite sure how that works. So you might find a tutorial on that. You might find that you don't quite know, what it is you want to achieve. So I really recommend just working through these. So each one, when you open up the tutorial, each one is a big chunk of text, but related, there's a tutorial patcher which will work and you can interact with it because it's all just a max patch. So like this one is all to do with how we add stuff together. So some familiar kind of objects here, adding stuff up. You can interact with it, you can play around with it. You can kind of learn as you go. Then the whole thing is explained through the help file, and then there'll be a summary of the objects that they've covered, and then other tutorials to look at. So there's some really good ones. There's some really good stuff that you probably wouldn't think about doing. Have a look at some random drawing. Oh, look at that. That's cool. Useful. I don't know. Fun. Interesting. Yeah. So that's some of the Max tutorials. With the MSP ones, it's quite good just in general to have a look at some of these. There's a whole thing here on how digital audio works, which is really interesting. Harmonics, overtones, yada yada. So loads of good stuff in there, and then some sort of basics on making different sounds, recording and playing samples, doing filtering. Let's have a look at one of these. Basic filtering in MSP, and if we open the tutorial, we'll get a thing that we can play around with, and we'd have to turn the audio on. Okay, so the audio's on, and what we should get is some sound. I don't know exactly what it's doing here. Yeah, I've not really bothered to try. There we go. Let's try and play around with these, but it's a sort of interactable patch. Mouse interaction, that's quite weird. Bypass filtering. Anyway, so there's information there, and yeah. So just to be clear, the audio is going out to the main DSP there in Max. So if you wanted to look at this inside Max for Live, that wouldn't work. It wouldn't make a sound. But there's nothing to stop you, because this is just a Max patch. If you're interested in some of this, like you want to know how to do low pass filtering, you can unlock the patcher. You can copy that part out there if you want to, and then you can paste it into your own work. Okay, so that's the first thing, is the built-in tutorials. Really recommend them. And as you can see here, they're probably going to cross over with some other elements of the course, particularly the stuff on digital audio. We'll look at this Fourier analysis, using fast Fourier transforms to work with MSP signals, using oscilloscopes and spectroscopes, making delay lines, using plugins with MSP. Weirdly, you can put a VST inside a Max patch. And if you're using Max for Live, you can put VSTs inside Max for Live devices. Which I don't know why you'd want to do that. There's a bunch on compression. So loads of stuff. Okay. Let's close that down for now. Just go back to our empty patch. The other thing that you'll find under there's a few other bits and bobs underneath here. The other thing that you'll find is quite useful underneath the help menu are the examples. And there's quite a few in here. I'm just going to highlight a couple that I think are quite interesting. So for example, the Forbidden Planet patch is quite good. This is a noise source up here that's being filtered by this weird graph here that you sort of draw in. It makes these weird sounds when you do that, so it's kind of like an extreme graphic EQ almost. It's a good sound. And again, if you wanted to use that in a Max for Live patch, you can just unlock it and nick the bit that you want, and then put it in your patch. I actually don't really fully understand what this does. There's something inside there. It does things. Doesn't matter though. It's a good example of something you could achieve in MSP. Yeah, bits on filtering. When you see this Gen stuff here, Gen is a kind of more of a low-level programming language inside Max. I don't think that it's I don't think that it gets authorized with a Max for Live license, but you can use, I think you can use examples that have been written for you. So there's quite a lot of things that you can investigate in there. I'm not going to go through them all. There's some stuff on making user interfaces, Java and JavaScript are kind of programming languages that work inside Max. It's way beyond the scope of this stuff. The multi-channel stuff. This is all the new features in Max 8, which I've not looked at before. You can do multi-channel audio somehow in Max. There's some good examples there. Stuff on sampling, stuff on sequencing and looping, doing spatialization, Doppler panning, mid-side matrices, making synths. I like this one, it's quite good. This is like an old school ring kind of phone dial thing. You can pick different numbers. It's quite a lot to unpick in that patch, but it's quite nice. And the classic one is the very special guest Stockhausen study, which is a complete Stockhausen score written in a Max patch. Which is quite interesting. Anyway, it's slightly beyond me, that. So lots of stuff inside Max. And the other thing to say about that, and I'll get back into this in Max for Live in a minute. The other thing to say about that is that anytime you're inside a patch and you're trying to figure out what objects to use, or trying to figure out what an object does, is the in application help files. And I've mentioned this before, but it's worth saying it again. The in application help files are really quite helpful, and they're all interactive as well. So let's say, for argument's sake, that we want to know how to that's its simplest object, I suppose, is Metro. You want to know how Metro works, right? So you find your way to Metro, and then you come across here to the reference, and it tells you, as you know, it tells you everything that every message that Metro can respond to, all the attributes for Metro, and then it will down here. It will say it's like a Amazon shopping list. Other people that bought Metro also bought Counter. What's Counter for? It keeps track of keeps count based on bang messages. Oh, that's useful. And you click on that, and then the reference will change to Counter, and then it will say, "Or see also tempo." That's quite useful, isn't it? And then you click on that, and then you'll get see also. So you can kind of go down these little journeys of different objects that do different things. And then for each one, it will also, sometimes it will suggest a tutorial, which you can open up, and it will jump back to the tutorial page for that object. So this is about timing and sequencing. And then that one is a reference chapter. So lots and lots and lots of help in there. But also, when you highlight an object and go to the help menu, you can open a patcher that has an example of how to use that object. So here's an example of how to use Counter. You bang it and it counts. That's quite good, isn't it? Look, this one's got increment and decrement in it, with some flags for maximum reached. And again, if that's useful, we can simply unlock the patcher, nick that stuff, copy it, and then paste it into your own work. So you're, rather than loading individual objects, what you're doing is finding examples of how to use them, and then putting your work together in that way, almost like code snippets. There are other places where you can find this stuff as well. When we right-click, we can see a paste from menu, and there are loads of little shortcuts for things. Like, for example, if you want to play a sound file, you can paste from this little sound file player, and then you get a little mini patch that will just sort of do a thing. So there's a whole range of kind of pre-made little bits and bobs. While we're looking at that, and I'll demo this in Max for Live in a minute, it's worth just looking at some of the other stuff going on over here. I know we've maybe seen this stuff. So these are all the objects and things up here. So I'd normally make objects by typing the name into a box. Down here, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. A database of objects, Max objects, and then a description of what they are. Some example audio files, so you can find audio to work in your, if you want to try something out in a patcher. Some video clips, some images, code snippets. We've just seen those. Plugins, that's access to your VST library. Visi and Beep are kind of modular systems. Visi's around kind of video synthesis, and Beep is a sort of modular synth thingy inside Max. So, like, for example, there's an oscillator that kind of looks like this, and then if I send this to an output, this might get loud, so I need a volume control. I said I wasn't going to do any patching, but I am. So it's got a whole modular synthesis system built in. I've used it before, and it's a little bit, honestly, it's a little bit weird to use. Like, the inputs are here are in volts per octave. Max doesn't do volts per octave, so I don't know what it's expecting there, but there's lots of these. So if you're into the idea of doing modular synthesis and but doing some stuff like that inside Max for Live, that might be quite nice. There's all kinds of weird things in here. Have a look at this. Mixers, Gaussian noise. That sounds like fun. Anyway, so there's lots and lots of stuff in the application that you can use to sort of get started and help you out. Okay, I'll quit the editor and reopen this inside Ableton. There we go. So how does this apply inside Max for Live? Okay, so I suppose the slight catch is with Max standalone, it doesn't care whether you're doing audio or MIDI or anything like that. In Max for Live, you sort of need to know whether you're doing audio, MIDI processing, or making an instrument. But beyond that, whatever it is that you choose to do, so if I make an instrument here and then load the editor, you can get to the same range of help files, because Max is Max. It's just that the editor looks like it's made inside Ableton. But go to the help menu and go to examples. We've got the same stuff. So here's the Forbidden Planet patch, but when you do start audio, that won't do anything. So what we would need to do is either add a plug out in there, or my preferred way is to take all of that stuff there, copy it out, paste it in my patch, and then put the plug out down there. Now it works inside Max for Live. So that's the kind of the difference there. It's plug out, not easy DSE. Apart from that, everything else is the same. So all the stuff is exactly the same. There are a few other things. I mean, these are sort of shortcuts to other bits and bobs. So there's loads of little shortcuts here. Look at your DSP CPU. But that's pretty much, I think it pretty much covers it in terms of in-application tutorials. I didn't learn how to use Max MSP through the in-application tutorials alone. There's always help in other places. So I'm going to point out one of those other places, which is possible that if you're watching this and you've already looked at some online tutorials, it's possible you've stumbled across this channel. This guy, Dude 837, is one of the best video tutorial makers for Max, principally, and subsequently Jitter and, hang on, I'm just going to take a drink. Jitter and Max for Live. And most of his tutorials, these are quite old, these ones. Most of these tutorials are all based in Max MSP. I saw actually that he took a long break and has recently started doing tutorial videos again, which is pretty exciting. But even though these are old, I really strongly recommend taking a look at them. So, for example, this is his first one. This one is geared around a particular facet of physical modeling. I'm just going to fast forward to a bit here that's got what looks like it's turning into a looks good, doesn't it? It's turning into a complete patch. This is max 5, so it looks very different, but we could quite easily recreate that inside max for live. Where's my editor gone? There it is. So and let's see how we go about doing that. So what we want to do is watch one of his tutorials and then have a go at making the thing that he's made. And while I'm building this, I'll explain what Car Plus Strong is. Car Plus Strong is a way of expressing a physical model of a plucked string, and the idea is that you use a low pass filter and a reciprocating delay line. There's got a very short delay time to mimic the way a string vibrates, and you make the thing vibrate by sending it an impulse, which is normally a burst of noise, which is what that is up there. So what's he got here? He's got one pole. Where does that go? So it's got a bit of a feedback path there, hasn't he? So we've got to multiply by 0.99 from that one pole, and then we've got tap in. I've seen a lot of examples of people using tap in, tap out for a lot of different purposes. Tap in, tap out goes to one pole, and that one will go back to the beginning, like that. One pole goes to the output. That's a volume control there, for which we can use live dot thing gain, live dot gain. It's the same sort of idea. That goes to there. Oops. Actually, we could do that, couldn't we? It's stereo. So we're going from mono to stereo there, but that's fine. So that's that. Plug out is that thing. That's the easy DAC object. And then he's got an ADSR with some numbers in it. And then he's got noise. And then he's got multiply. The ADSR goes into the multiply, as does the noise. And then that goes to the tap in. And then that's got a message box with a 1, and that's got a message box with the word max sustain in it. I don't know what that means. Doesn't really matter, because what I'm doing is just following his tutorial to see if I can get it working inside Max for Live. Did a thing. That's got a number in. Cool. So it sounds sort of like a plucked string. There's more to this tutorial, but my point there is that you can take anyone's Max tutorial and modify it with very little work by swapping out a few objects into Max for Live, as long as you understand what the context is, you know, like whether it's MIDI processing or audio processing or sort of sound design and generation, then you can just kind of go for it. So I really recommend looking at the delicious Max tutorials, and he does have a couple geared up specifically towards Max for Live. I think in his playlists there's Max for Live spotlights, and he's quite an amusing guy. So there's, I don't know if these are all tutorials on Max for Live. I think this one particularly is just highlighting someone's own Max for Live device, but useful nonetheless. And don't forget that as much as you can kind of follow tutorials and make your own stuff, you can also find other people's Max patches and Max for Live patches, pick them apart and learn how they work. And a good way into that is the Cycling 74 kind of sort of on-site help and tutorials and referencing and stuff, but elsewhere on their website there's there are forums that you can ask questions about all things Max MSP, Max for Live, and jitter related. So I found a lot of useful stuff in here, and you'll quite often find that wow, this stuff all looks really good, doesn't it? You quite often find that people will post Max patches. I probably should have prepped this. People will post Max patches in the blog, and to make use of those, really hoping I'd find one quite easily. Anyway, to make use of those, in the blog posts, you'll see pasted Max patch, and you can copy that to the clipboard, and then in your Max editor, you can go File, New from Clipboard. So if you find someone, let's just have one more look at random. No. You can quite often just paste someone's answer straight into a new patcher. I won't push my luck with that. Okay. That's what I wanted to cover in this short video. I don't want to labour the point too much. I'm not going to do any more patching. I'm not going to do any more explanation. My hope is that I'll be able to run some in-person, on-site sessions on Max for Live in a couple of weeks when we get back on site. So I'm going to leave it there for now, but I'm going to be I'll be there in Teams. So I'll kind of restart the meeting in Teams. I'll be there in Teams. If you've been watching this and you've got questions, or you just want to come and say hi, I'm going to be over there for the next half an hour or so, just as a sort of addition to this little bit. So I hope that was useful, and I'll see you over there perhaps in a little bit.